Okay guys, we're going to talk about setting up your water-fed pole system. If you've gotten on my YouTube page and you've ordered from Patreon and you got my parts list, you should have these parts. And as I talked before, we're not going to build it. I'm not building the cart. You're going to have to figure out how to get this thing there. But if you do have these components and you want to get this stuff out to the job site, the truth is that you can take a wagon, anything else, you could put the filters in there, you could hook the hoses together, you could bring the three parts and hook them all up together out on the job site, and the thing won't run without the cart. That's why the cart is sort of up to you. All your components are going to come out. I've had some phone calls over the past couple years and I've walked a few people on how to do this, but I figured I'd just show a video on a couple of the critical things. So I guess maybe the first thing we should talk about are the Pentac housings here in the beginning. When you get these Pentac housings, on the bottom, on the lid, there's going to be an arrow. And the arrow is going to show the direction of the water. So the way you need to think about this is the direction of the flow from the water that comes into the system, that comes in from a garden hose. And on this end, I have my garden hose adapter over here. So my water's coming in, and that means my arrow on the bottom side of this, if I took this off this bracket here that I have this mounted to, there would be an arrow facing that direction. And then there would be an arrow up here that faces out. So that tells me my garden water is coming in here. This is my garden hose adapter. It goes into my carbon filter and it runs through here and then it comes out. Now it's taking the chlorine out of it. And then the next phase is we're gonna go into our RO membrane. And this is the thing that I think I have the most phone calls about. So I'm gonna show you this kind of in detail. So you're gonna get your RO housing. Your RO housing mine is set up like this. I've just taken my stuff out, okay? So basically what you're gonna do is you're gonna get your RO housing, you're gonna get these kind of jinky clamps, you're going to get the cap, and you're going to put that cap on one end, and you're going to tighten up the clamps around that. And inside that cap, before you do that, this black cap, I had a silicone, 100% silicone grease that you got. You would take some of that grease, put it on your finger, and stick it down in the center hole in this thing. On the inside of this cap, there will be a hole, and that's what this nipple fits down in from your RO membrane. This is going to slide down in there. Inside those caps, at the bottom, I have one right here, you have two O-rings in there. Those are what you want to lube up. You want to get a good amount of that silicone lube, put it on your finger, get it in there, get that all lubed up, and then go ahead and lube up this nipple on this RO membrane as well. Then if this were the end that I was going to attach to, which I already have attached here, so I'm not going to use that end, that's going to be my top end. I'm going to put this cap on. I'm going to leave all these fittings off of it for now. I'm going to put the cap on. I'm going to tighten this down. I've got that lubed up in there. Then I'm going to take my RO housing and I'm going to set it up like this on the cap. And then on your RO membrane, these things come out like this. So they're going to have, well, I've talked to a few people about this, they're going to have this brine seal. This is a seal that keeps the water, when it's coming into the system, from going on the outside of this RO membrane, between the RO membrane and the housing itself. So you want to drop this thing in on the end without a seal on it. The other end will look like it needs like an O-ring on it, but it won't. That's the end you're going to drop down in there. So we've now lubed this RO membrane up, and I'm going to take it and I'm going to put it in here. I'm going to slide it down in. It's going to kind of hit the bottom, and when this, mine is not lubed up, but if it was lubed up, mine actually slipped down in there anyway. So it just slipped down in. My brine seal now is facing back up towards me. It's coming up to the top. If you drop it in the other direction, you'll bend that brine seal back the opposite direction, and then you can get some water flow. Once you do this and you get this in here, the brine seal is facing up, I've dropped it down in. Now I got to put my cap on. Again, we're going to lube up this nipple on the inside, and we're going to put our other end cap, we're going to press it down on there, and then we're going to attach it. I like to mark the outside of this because this is the side where the water comes in. This side with the brine seal is going to be where your water comes in from your carbon filter in the beginning. And that water is going to come in on the side port. So you aren't going to have a side port on this. You aren't going to have your plug in yet. You're just going to put this down on. You're going to slip it down on with the silicone. You also want to silicone up these O-rings if you have them on your cap. You want to put some silicone grease around there as well. That'll slide down in here much easier, and this whole thing will cinch together. Then you put your bracket on it. So I'm coming out of my first filter. I've got my carbon filter. I've run my hose out, and now I've attached my adapter, my hose adapter here. It doesn't matter what end the plug goes in. The water coming out of the carbon filter will come into the side port so that it goes down in here in all this paper. That's where the water runs through. It removes the TDS in that paper. When you run that water through there for a while, when it filters, when it comes out filtered and all the TD or most of the TDS is removed, it will come out of this center port of this RO membrane and back out either end. It doesn't matter which end it comes out. So if it works better for your system to run the water in and then take the water out here, that's fine. You just have to take the cap, then the plug cap, and put it on the opposite end. I ran mine so my water comes in, goes in the side, comes out the center, but it comes out the center down on this end of my RO membrane housing. And it comes out of this one. This is a push fitting, and this is also on the list. These were the coolest things. This is worth 10 bucks just by itself to find these things up in Chicago, where I told you where those are at on that parts list. That alone, that piece is so cool. But anyway, that's where my clean water comes out, and then my shutoff valve is down here. When you get this all set up and you got everything hooked up and you've got it how you want it and you got all your hoses hooked up, when you first start this thing up, you're going to want to take the water and you're going to want to run it through your system, and you're going to want to open this valve all the way up, and you're going to want to just let that flow for about 20 minutes to completely saturate that new RO membrane that's in there. After that, you can begin to crank down your shutoff valve. You can turn it down, turn it down, turn it down until you just get a little trickle. You don't necessarily have to have a hose on here. What I found is, I put the hose on because when you turn this down and it's under pressure, it'll spray out just like a nozzle would, or if you put your thumb over the end of a hose. It's gonna give it some pressure because it's gonna be coming through this little needle valve in here, and that water was shooting out like 4 or 5 feet, and I didn't want to take it out to a job site. So I just attached this little hose to the end of it, and then that kind of catches the stream that comes out, and then it just trickles out here when it's running. So you'll kick this back as low as you can get it with a little water flowing. Again, all your TDS is building up in the membrane. So at the end of the day, after you've used it, you're going to want to open this thing back up with the water on to flush the membrane, all the particles that were caught in that membrane in there. You're going to want to flush those out. So I usually let that run for a couple minutes at the end. Other than that, just going through the system, you got the garden hose hook up on the front end of one of your Pentac filters, whichever one you pick. You're going to have a carbon filter in there. On these Pentac housings, when you set these up, these filter housings, they will also have a black O-ring in them. I would advise taking those out and also putting silicone grease on those before you slap them back in here on this cover and then screw them on. I like to orient my filters upside. I want to orient them like this. I have another system that runs straight up and down. What I found is when it's time to replace the filters and you're using the system, if you got to get in there and replace one, when you go to unscrew this and it's facing this direction, the whole thing is full of water and it gets heavy. And what happens is you unscrew it, and when the threads come off, it drops to the ground, it splashes water up on you. So what I found with my second system is that by putting it upside down, when I unscrew this a little bit, the water comes out, I've drained the water out, and I can lift the cap off. But it does create some issues with that O-ring wanting to stay in there, so I usually just lay the O-ring down in the housing and then screw this thing down on top of it, and that'll do the trick. When you tighten these blue housing caps on the top of your Pentac filter cap, you just want to hand tighten that down. You do not want to take the wrench that comes with the system and torque that down. You just hand tighten them, get them there. You'll know when you turn the water on, it's got a little leak or whatever. I'll just give it a little bit more of a turn, and that should seal it up. But the beginning of the system, again, is, Lance, if you'll come over here. The beginning of the system is this hose adapter. I've got a reducer here that I screwed that onto. And then I've screwed it in here. Be very careful about going in with metal reducers or any connecting plumbing on this, because you're going metal into plastic. You do not want to torque that down a ton. You want to be careful. I mean, you can take a wrench to it, but don't tighten it down a lot because you'll strip out those plastic threads in there if you go crazy with it. So we go in here on the front. We got our carbon filter in here. It's going to filter through. It comes through. It ties into the front end of that housing. Comes in again on the side port. runs down through, filters to the center tube, and comes out back on this side when my pressure is reduced. If my pressure's open, you will not get any flow out of this. So you have to kick this way down. You do not want to turn it all the way off. You want that to have a little trickle as it runs. Then it comes out of here and it goes to my last filter, which is this one. Comes in here, and this is where the resin is. So same deal. Remember, I got my arrows on top of this, so my water comes in, my arrows are facing here on my cap, they're pointing that direction, and then they come out here, the arrow faces that direction. So I've come in from my RO membrane, I'm coming into my last thing with my push fitting here, my last filter. The water's gonna come in, it's gonna come up, and it's gonna go into here. When you get this resin canister, it's gonna have two ends on it. Both of them are gonna unscrew. This also has a foam disc down in there. That foam disc, the way you want to fill this up is, you want to take both these in, well, you just take this end off, which is the end that looks like a bicycle spoke, okay? And it's got my foam disc is in here somewhere. So it's right here. So I'm gonna set my foam disc in there. That's how I'm gonna do that. Then I'm gonna put my lid back on the top, because you're gonna pack that resin in around that cylinder. If you fill this up with resin, you can't get that cylinder down in there. So this is actually the top. This is where the water comes into the system, comes in through here. Most of these, I think this one does too somewhere, has like a gasket right there. And I think you'll see that on yours. So you're gonna tighten that down, just like that. And then you're gonna turn it this direction and you're gonna fill your resin in here. You're gonna fill your resin up almost all the way to the top of that, maybe where those threads are. You wanna get as much in there as you can. I pour a little resin in, I kind of pack it down. I pour a little more resin, I pack it down. I just keep doing that until I fill it up. Then I put my foam disc back in this end. That keeps the resin from coming out of here when you put it in the system. So you put that foam in there and you're gonna tighten this down. And then when this goes back in the system, the water comes in here, so the water's coming in here on your system. It's gonna flow up into the center, it's gonna go down through the center tube, hit the resin, it's gonna backflow back out of there, and it's gonna come back out of this piece out here. So this is gonna orient like this. You're spoked in with the foam, the bottom will be in my case, will be up on top. This piece will meet this right here, and the water will flow down through that tube and into the resin. I think that's about it. I mean, I guess the last thing is, we could talk just briefly about setting up your Teflon tape. So where did I put that? Okay. So in that system also, in that parts list, we have this Teflon tape. Every one of these fittings needs Teflon on it before you put it in the system. So don't just screw those in. So this is what your Teflon tape's for. Now, when you're putting on Teflon tape, there's a trick to this. You're going to look at the end of your fitting and you're going to put the Teflon tape on the back side of the threads. And I am going to wrap that clockwise. That's the way I'm wrapping my Teflon. I'm wrapping it clockwise, not counterclockwise, clockwise. That's the way you want to do it, because the way these screw in, they're going to righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. As you turn it to the right, it's going to tighten the threads around there. So I put more towards the back, and I do one little strip up here in the front, and I give it a little pull like that. Okay, so we're gonna even that all out. We're gonna get that nice. We got good threads. We got a heavier, maybe 2 or 3 rounds back here, maybe 1.5 here, and then 1 towards the front. And I've wrapped it on clockwise. As I'm looking at it, I went clockwise with my Teflon, so that when I screw this in to the right, the threads will bite down on that and they will pull that Teflon thread also clockwise. That will make that thread tighter. If you do it counterclockwise and you start screwing this in, it's going to unwrap your Teflon tape and you may have leaks. So that's probably the only other pointer I could give you. I appreciate you buying the parts list. You can call me if you have any questions. The number is all over the website. It's on almost every one of the videos. You can give me a call. You can send me an email. I prefer to just talk over the phone. It's so much simpler for me than to try to email and try to explain all this stuff. But I think we've done a pretty good job here tonight of kind of telling you how this all orients, how it all lays out. Got your blue filter on the front, garden hose adapter on that. In the back end, you're going to have your hose push fitting. That's going to go into your RO housing. It's going to come in through the black cap. It's going to come in the side port. Then the water is all going to go to the center port, and that's where it's going to come out, either on the same end or the opposite end. It doesn't matter. Just put the cap in the opposite end. So if you want your clean water coming out the same end that your filtered carbon filtered water goes in, well then you just put that fitting, that hose fitting, on the side port, and then you put the other one on the center port, and the water will go in. The cap will be plugged down here. It'll flow to the middle, and it'll come out. And then on this opposite end, if you had the cap down here and you wanted the clean water, you're still going to need your valve down here that you open up to flush the system. So it doesn't matter which way it goes on those. But the water is clear. It needs to come in on the inward side. It needs to come in, and on the outward side, it's going to come through the middle, and then it's going to go to your final filter, which it'll go in and orient your arrows. Don't forget about those arrows, because you want that flowing the right direction. You do not want to bring it in against the arrows and try to push it in here, because the water, the system doesn't work that way. It comes through this tube, goes up through your thing, and then comes out here and flows back out. So that's why you want to make sure that you are following the arrows with your water flow. So mine are upside down. I think I did one of those backwards at one point in time, and I think I was blowing some caps off the end of my RO housing. There was just some pressure issues. So anyway, got that all fixed. That's pretty much the end of it, and I think that's about as good as we can do. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to call me, 913-207-6116. I'm in Kansas City. If you want to email me, you can email me. All the links are on there and everything's on there. So thanks again for watching, and thanks for buying the system. Let me know if I can help. Thanks.